Hi, everybody. We've got about 3 minutes. I hit record, so hopefully it will record. Let's see. For those of you just joining us, I just want to bring to your attention before we get started, I'll just say some things about the website here. This is our homepage. If you ever don't get an email from me, but you just want to join in the conference call anyway, what's happening right now, you can always go to the homepage and just click right here, and it'll work. Under comments, we've had a few people post some work last week and or comments. So again, I just want to emphasize, if you're not an artist and you're just an art appreciator, wonderful. We love art appreciators. You can comment on the comment section about how you felt about the artist. You don't have to make a work of art. Although there's some beautiful pieces here and some other myths that came through from other people who come from other cultures, Finland and Russia, and let's see, what else do we have here? I think that's it for those extra myths, but or your opinion, a myth that you know about. Well, today you can still always comment on old things. If you went back and watched videos on Kyle Staver and then decided you wanted to put input about that, that's also fine. And one thing I just found and posted, if anyone is going to LA over the next few months, there's a great show that is opening up. I posted it under the comments. And it goes to this article right here that talks about extraordinary California women artists working from 1860 to 1960. And this show is opening at the Pasadena Museum of History. And it's all women artists in California. So that's pretty exciting. Looks like a good show. I'm gonna try and go see it. So that's one thing, current event happening right now. So if you have a show coming up, or if there's something, I had someone email me and say, hey, here's an opportunity people might be interested in, please go ahead and add it to the comment section right here. I can't find the other one that I posted with, I had some art shows going up, but just post it here because this is the only place anyone looks anyway. And the way to do that is to click this pink plus sign right here, and then it'll give you a little text box. And if you want to put a link to, say, a website, you click this link right here, or you can download images, and that's how you add a comment. So let's get ourselves over to, today we're talking about Titian and Neo Rauch, and I'm really excited about Tintoretto. Tintoretto is my favorite of the Renaissance period. And the reason being is because I think he does more. I'm not saying that, you know, Michelangelo and Titian and everyone else in the Renaissance period, they're all extremely valuable. And to me, Titian is the icing on the cake. He is the last stop for me. It is said maybe possibly that he studied under Titian, but that's not completely confirmed. And since we're talking about someone who was born in 1518, we do have a lot of opinions coming out of people talking about, you know, what was his, what wasn't his, did his children paint it, did his apprentices paint it? Of course, I mean, these paintings are massive, massive. And in those times, and even in these times, someone like Henry Wiley has entire warehouses filled with people painting on his paintings. Jeff Koons has entire warehouses of people working on his paintings. So a lot of artists employ that method. It is not necessarily my favorite choice, but you also can't paint maybe an entire ceiling in your lifetime without some help. So there's reasons for this. There's controversy about Tintoretto. I really love his work. So let's just jump right in. He is known as one of the masters of the Renaissance period. He was born in 1818. He had a pretty great career. his whole career. He may have apprenticed under Titian. Getting a little comment here. I don't know where it went. Okay, I don't know.
There's dog fight.
He's also known, he's controversial, he was very controversial at the time, as both artists that we're talking about today are very controversial in the way that they made their work. So Titian was, let me get to the PowerPoint here, he was someone who, I'm saying Titian and I mean Tintoretto, so if I mess it up again, just know that I'm talking about Tintoretto and not Titian. Oh. So can everybody mute themselves? Let's mute. I'm not hearing anything, but there's
there you go.
I'm gonna just mute. Lower your hand. Maureen, did you have a question?
That's better.
Okay. It was just about muting people.
Marina's muted. All right, Daniel's muted. Okay. All right, now we can hear, I hope. Okay, everybody can hear? Okay, so here we are. I'm in the wrong thing. Hey, what happened to my PowerPoint? Hey, what happened to my PowerPoint? I've been talking up all my access. Okay, so, oops. Here we are. Tintoretto, Neo Rauch. We're talking about two artists, oops, again, 500 years apart. Technical difficulties today. There we go. Did I mute myself? Oh, a lot of noise. Okay, so if you're just coming on, mute yourself. Muting, muting, muting. All right. Somebody's TV probably. Okay, so if you have your TV on, I think everybody's muted now. If you haven't muted yourself, please try, but I think I've muted everyone now. If it's still going on, please tell me. I'm gonna lower your hand here. If it's still going on, let me know. Okay, so we're talking about Tintoretto. He was having a great life and career in Venice. We're talking about the Renaissance. We're talking about the late Renaissance. He may have studied under Titian. He's a genius. He was, you know, very much studied the human figure for many, many, many years. And I think both of the artists we talk about today are geniuses in their own right, in their sense of color composition and their way of going about making the work. Specifically, he's known for using really rich brush stroke, which at the time, you know, we don't think, we don't think of that as something super exciting today, but you can imagine back in the day when they were using thin paint and trying to make it look like a photograph, showing your brushwork wasn't exactly something that was admired. So he's showing big brush strokes and you can tell that he's working frantically and there's all this movement in his paintings. So there's a few theories about his work. My favorite theory is that he made mock-ups in like little sculptures of figurines, and he would dress them up in little pieces of cloth and even hang them from the ceiling or from his little box. He would create little shoe boxes almost with the composition of the figures in the box. So last week I mentioned that Kyle Staver was using reliefs, and she was carving out of clay and making her sculptures before she made her paintings. Now we have Tintoretto, who's literally sculpting little tiny figures and putting clothing on them like dolls and making compositions, suspending them from the air so that he could see what the drapery looked like and what the painting looked like. And this is extremely interesting to me because I always wondered, you know, without cameras, how did they do that? How did they know that the figure was twisting this way and suspended in air? And so to me, that makes the most sense of something that he would have done. Although some people don't believe that's what he did. I don't know. I don't know if there's evidence or not, but we are very, very lucky to be alive in the month of March next month, because Tintoretto's work, a huge, entire, giant show, has traveled to the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., and will be up through June. 200 drawings, several paintings, huge paintings, some of the largest paintings that barely could fit through the building, but they made it across. They're currently probably being hung. There was a little hang up due to the government shutdown that shut that down for a little while. It was supposed to open March 3rd, and now it's opening March 24th. And it will be up through June. So if you're going to Washington or if you're going to the East Coast before the end of June, you can see this show in the United States. Very exciting. So I'm gonna go in June before it closes. Oops, I keep doing that, thinking I can scroll down the page. All right, so we have a man who's creating compositions from mock-ups, from drawings. He didn't actually do too many pre-drawings of his paintings. That's another thing that's very different for him as opposed to other Renaissance painters who would plan out their compositions and plan out, you know, sacred geometry and put things on certain diagonals, although he has more diagonals than most of the artists, in my opinion, at that time. And he supposedly did not use preliminary drawings to create his work. Pretty amazing. So it says here, he prepared a small model stages with wax, clay figures, stringing them. He had 8 children who also then became his apprentices and worked with him. The next artist we're going to talk about today is Neo Rauch. I can't say it. I'm going to say Rauch. It's Neo Rauch, something like that. I don't know. You may have heard of him. He is living currently in Germany. He was born in 1960. He is a weird character in the sense he also just seems like a complete genius to me that sort of lives in that artistic space and doesn't ever really leave there. I don't know if you've had that happen to you before, if you paint every single day and you get in that creative space every day and then it's sort of like hard to shift your head out of it. I kind of feel like he always lives there in that creative space. Anyway, I don't know that. You can tell by looking at him and watching him paint in some of the videos. There is a documentary coming out about him, and so I did post the 1 to 2 minute just teaser trailer that they put up. I'm very excited about that video because it was hard to find some videos on him that weren't in German. I had a really hard time. Even the subtitles would be in German. I couldn't tell what they were saying. So if you're German or speak German, you have the upper hand here, and you can watch some of those videos on YouTube that I couldn't watch. But basically, he's an interesting character because he was born in Germany, and it is said, although it's pretty hard to find, there's very little about his life, and maybe that'll come out in the video. In one video, it said that his parents were killed when he was 4 weeks old in an accident. I think they said a train accident or a car accident. And then he was raised by his grandparents. So you can imagine how being a baby and having your parents die so tragically young would affect you profoundly over your life. Then he studied painting in Germany at the, I'm not even going to try to say that word, Hochschule, and met other members of the new Leipzig school. So there's several important people from that era that you might have heard some of these other artists as well. So currently, this man is not very old. Let's see, what is he, 59? And his work is selling before he even makes it. He is making work also not starting from preliminary drawings. So that's another theme that we could talk about. The preliminary drawings, it's always comes straight from his head onto the canvas. He talks about it as, you know, it's an automatic painting, a response to what's coming through him, essentially. So, and again, he has these very wild compositions as well as Tintoretto. So I think there's a lot of things that we could talk about. He does employ a lot of the master work methods that you would learn in a traditional painting school, a traditional figure painting school in Europe. I mean, you can tell he has an automatic skill. He's painting these figures out of his head. Even the clothing, it's coming from a different era. It seems as if he's almost transmitting messages in a way. Who knows? I don't know. But that's what he says. And you see him agonize over the paintings in the videos. He makes a mark, he puts a figure in, he steps back and he stares at it and he analyzes it. Another strange and interesting aspect to this man is, and I'm just going to flip to the next image so you can look at it for a second before I talk about it. Another strange thing about this man is his marriage. His wife, I couldn't get a lot of information about her, but there's one clip in the video where she walks into his studio and she says, oh, I think she'd look nice with an earring. Put an earring there. And it's almost as if she's directing some of the elements in his paintings. He did. He just put it right in. He didn't even question her. If my partner came into my studio and told me to put an earring on my figure, I would kick him out of my studio because, you know, that's weird to me, but who knows? Anyway, there's some weird dynamics going on. I'm just the messenger. So here we go. Here we are looking at The Miracle of the Slave up top here. The top painting is by Tintoretto. This is sort of the painting that is the most famous painting by Tintoretto. The first thing I notice about this painting is the color. And it is said that he had written on his wall in his studio, I want my paintings to have the line quality of Michelangelo and the color of Titian. And I think you can see, you know, he wanted the composition and the line of Michelangelo, and he wanted the color of Titian. And I think it shows what he was trying to do in this painting more than I've ever seen anywhere else. So the main thing that you can see is that he employs complementary colors next to each other, but also more than anything, this purplish red is the color that helps us get through the space, that carries us through. So let me see if so you can see this top figure in the left here is the first sort of purpley red that comes in, and it brings us in the left side, and it carries us over to St. Paul here. St. Paul or St. Mark? Can't remember. St. Paul. And St. Paul, he did 6 paintings about the saint, and this is the story of the slave who dedicates himself. He leaves and dedicates himself to the saint, and then when he comes back, the leader is mad and he says, hey, we're gonna now hit you with a hammer, and then the hammer breaks. We're gonna break your knees, and then that hammer breaks, and we're gonna bonk out your eyes with this tool, and then that tool breaks because he's being protected by the saint. So that's what we're looking at. It's like all the viewers are here to watch this slave get beat up for doing something bad, for leaving the city and going to dedicate himself to St. Mark, and then St. Mark is up here protecting him and breaking all the tools before they hit the slave on the head. So that's the story that we're looking at. And then you also have the person who paid for the paintings right here in the corner looking in as a viewer. I can't remember his name, but that's who that is over there. So you get the sense that they don't know that this saint is up here. All the people in the figure, in the painting, are looking down here. They're not understanding what's going on except for that they're seeing a miracle. And then he's up here, and us as the viewer of the painting get to know that. We get to read the painting that way. So really, I think he does a lot of masterful things. Another thing I think we could talk about with both of these artists is the movement of the figures. There's hardly ever just a plain standing figure. They're always twisting, moving, often twisting forward while turning backward. There's a lot of obvious draftsmanship, natural draftsmanship in both of these men's work, and I think they are extremely talented painters. So down here, I didn't do as good at naming the paintings for all of Rauch's work. There's so many, so many. I remember in 2014, I went to David Werner in New York and saw his solo show, and he has been showing there. So he's had a short career, Neo Rauch. He didn't join school until 1980, and then his career took off in 1990. And then he had his first solo show with David's Warner in 2000. And he's been showing with David's Warner Gallery ever since then. Multiple solo shows, including the one that I saw, which I think was called Off the Wall. I can't remember. But anyway, the first thing I remember seeing about these paintings was trying to piece them together and make sense of the narrative. We can't. We can't make sense of the narrative. The narratives come out of his psyche, and the narratives are not based on any myth or story that has come from the world as we know it, but they really are more about creating a space that the painting is completed within the painting and the image itself. Even though there is narrative, we could call it surrealism. He doesn't say he's a surrealist painter because he doesn't think he's coming from a place of surrealism. However, the rest of the art world kind of agrees, okay, these are pretty surrealistic paintings. There's realistic elements that we know, human beings, and then there's surreal things that we don't know that are going on, like this sharky marine life figure with a human face. We don't quite know what's going on with this girl back here. These are not things that we can attribute to past Greek myths or stories of St. Mark or stories from the Bible or stories from any culture. These are just coming from his brain, and maybe in a sense you could create your own myth from the paintings and decide what you want the myth to be, and maybe to him it's not a myth at all. So these words are controversial in ways. However, I want you to consider both of these artists are using a form of deep space. I think in this case it looks like he's painting the inside of his studio. And then he comes in with elements that are, again, surreal. But you can see, you know, he has rolls of paintings down here. He's got a door that's covered in paint, a painting on a wall, a ladder. It's probably that part of this came from his studio. Part of these figures probably came from his mind. Who knows? But it's almost like piecing together a puzzle. I've noticed a lot of artists doing a similar thing like this, only it doesn't work as well in 2019, because what you can tell is happening is that these artists are going to their computer and they're piecing together images from different places in Photoshop and then painting it that way. And I can always tell when that's happened. It has a flatness to it. And in this work, I really do get the understanding of him pulling this out of the painting. He's pulling it out of his brain. He's pulling it out of the painting. He's letting the creativity guide the work. And he just has an amazing sense of what a figure looks like in his head. If he's not using mock-ups, if he's not using photographs, if he's not using images that he's pulling from somewhere, he's creating them in his head and really looking at a picture in his brain, so to speak, to figure out how those figures turn and bend and twist and sit. Even the way she's got one knee forward on that table is pretty interesting. So one thing I like to do sometimes is just challenge myself. For you life drawers, those of you who like life drawing, I try to play a game in my head in my notebook, and I say, okay, can I draw figures sitting on a chair from my head? Can I draw a figure reaching up to the sky? Can I draw a figure bending over and lifting one leg? Just to see if I can actually challenge myself to know how those bodies move in space. And once you've been drawing figures for a long time, you usually can do that. This painting up here is the origin, no, not the origin. It is Mary and Jesus being adorned by the treasurers. These are the three men who paid for the painting, I believe, and Mary there, and Jesus, baby Jesus, and we got, we also have Jesus as an adult being crucified, I believe, on the side there. Mainly this painting is important to me, again, because of the color of the robes and how that reddish purple is, again, carrying us through the entire composition. Look at this. It starts with Mary, and it literally leads you to the next man. Then you go to this leg right here and travel down up his sleeve, and then through the three treasures, and out the other side. Pretty clever. Pretty clever. So we're talking about art here. I mean, we're talking about color here, and we're talking about color in class as well. it's kind of sad. This guy right here, he got over cleaned, so the color's not so good. But it still reads. The colors still carry us through the image. Same thing here even. You could call it a yellow carry through. You know, you've got the yellow bringing us in right here, and then we get more yellow here, traveling through this lit yellow curtain down through the floor, through the figures, out through this stuff, and out this yellow painting on the other side. How interesting. All right, next painting, or we're never going to get done because, 8 minutes. Okay, so now we have Origin of the Milky Way. I guess that's not really how it happened in real life, but, you know, we didn't find that out till way later. But, you know, Jesus is getting some milk here, or the baby's getting some milk, and it's creating the stars, which created the Milky Way, which they thought were just one big blanket. They didn't know that it was millions of billions of little stars at the time. So again, this is a piece that you could imagine him mocking up these figures in little tiny sculptures and then suspending them in air and wrapping this figure even in a red cloth and a blue cloth and sort of twisting their arms and turning them, putting them in exactly the sort of flying composition that he needs so that they look like they're suspended in air. And this painting, I believe, is carried through more by the blues. If you saw Titian, was it Titian last week? Yes. And his blue skies, and you're learning about lapis lazuli or cobalt or indigo in our book, then this has a little more meaning to you. The fact that these blues, although I did hear that Rhett in a video, he didn't have to worry about getting at his blues. He had plenty of funds coming in for his commissions. So not quite the same as Michelangelo waiting for his lapis. And then over here, again, you know, I want you to pay attention in both of these artists' work. Another thing we talked about this week in classes is the diagonals and perspective. And look at this zigzag he's created. 1, 2, 3 that takes us to the top or takes us down. He's even put trees sideways here at diagonals to help you get through the space. These sticks that are pulling through the figure and down, or maybe it's actually a handrail. Now I see that. And they're climbing up this walkway. Again, another painting carried by blue, even though these other, you know, these pieces right here with the green and red, which are complementary, which burst out to us because they're complementary. This painting is still carried by the blues in this case. So sort of an interesting way. You could look at the way they both deal with the skies differently. Rauch has a little bit more of a much more modernist style in that it's looser, even looser brushwork, but you can consider how loose some of this brushwork is on Tintoretto's work as well. Okay, here on the left, we are now looking at Susanna and the Elders. And here she is. This is an interesting lighting and interesting diagonals right here, which are created by the light coming from, maybe from the mirror even, actually. The light might be reflecting from the mirror onto her, but you can see diagonal coming across her from the backlit. There's one of the elders back there, another elder coming around this side. But the diagonals, you get a sense of perspective, really deep space in his work, and a narrative that goes on and on and on and on. You know, there's elements that you could look at in these paintings there that you can find. Maybe you've looked at this painting 100 times, but you never noticed the bird in the top right corner. And now that you care about corners, you are going to look and find these animals over here and where this light is coming from and how these diagonals are affecting the movement of the composition. Whenever you put diagonals in your work, look at this big X right through his painting. I could literally draw an X and it would line up with these heads, this circle, and this cloud, and this light moment right here. Similarly, I could go through this side with a diagonal and just put an X right through, diagonally through both of these paintings, and they have sort of an X underlying composition. So whenever you want to make movement in your paintings or create a sense of depth, you put perspective and you put diagonals. Talk about deep space here. We are talking about, this is another of St. Paul paintings, and here's the person who paid for it again in the front and center, being more human than the rest. And we are actually in a cemetery in this painting. Very strange, you know, they're lifting up the floor to pull out the body here in the cemetery. But basically, in this one painting, you get a sense that you are in a room that is massively large and long. And at the very front, in the back, there's some information, and in the very front, it's telling you more information about the painting. Now, if you squint your eyes and look at this painting, it very much, again, tells you where to look, and what the most important things you need to look at are by how lit they are, how light they are, how light this body is that's laying on the ground, and how light this moment is where they're pulling the body from the casket or whatever they're doing back there. Now we have the more modern look over here, not the same subject matter, of course, but you know, you could see how you could learn from both of these artists and pull it into your work in a completely different, in your way. So I wonder, from knowing what you know now, how maybe color will affect your composition, how diagonals will affect your composition, how learning from masters will affect your composition. I think there's nothing more important than sitting down at your desk and drawing from Titian, Tintoretto, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and copying their drawings over and over and over again. Learn what they're learning. Learn about how they're connecting the figures. Learn about how everything connects. Look at this. This black thing, who knows what it is, comes into his arm, this table. The legs connect to this, who knows what, snake-like, slug-like figure. And this green is, this weird sappy green is moving us through the composition. I couldn't tell you what's going on in this painting. I have no clue. I don't even know that he knows. He knows that he's trusting his gut, and he knows he's doing what the painting needs, and he knows he's adding elements that come through him that help him create the composition. But more than that, I don't know. A lot of people say, you know, this is crazy, that he's selling works for millions of dollars before they're even sold. He's not, you know, worth it. Is he going to make it through the test of time? So there's some real issues that come up. I mean, to me, bad press is better than no press. So he's making a conversation, and I think that's important. I think you should be able to talk about artists this way and have criticism against artists that maybe you want to question. And I think you should question every artist's motive. You know, why is he doing this? Is he doing it for the love of painting? Is he doing it for the love of money? Is he doing it for the love of fame? Is he doing it because he loves a good composition? I don't know. These are things I like to talk about, though, with my friends, and scrutinize and analyze and go to the art shows and figure out what these things are doing and if I like them. When I went to the show in New York, I had this like sense of awe when I walked in, because the paintings are massive. All of these paintings are massive, ambitious paintings. And I also felt confused. And I also felt like they all have sort of a dreary feel to them, like sort of it, you know, he wants to put everything in. It has the suffrage, it has the normalcy of humanness, and it also has this dreamlike quality. I haven't quite decided how I feel about these, and to me that's a good thing, because once you've named something, you've sort of stopped learning about it. You know, it's almost the curiosity that comes from these is what keeps people coming back. Then down here, this beautiful painting. What I think about his Tintoretto, again, and Neo Rauch, is there's this very humanness that comes into these superhuman moments. So, you know, he's still, you know, putting on his shoes or attaching his knife or pulling off his pants in this corner right here. This guy is helping him pull off his pant leg. This guy's putting on his pants, and there's a dog here, which makes us know just how human these people are. However, they have halos. So then we know some of these are holy men. And then the story starts unfolding for us in a different way. And we have, I think Jesus is washing the feet of the his disciples. And again, he doesn't leave us with no deep space. Actually, look at this tiny little, I forget what we call this, windmill thing, space, a building in the back, and there's another one closer. Same thing, we have a deep archway. Actually, I wonder if Rauch was looking at Tintoretto, because look at this, small windmill, large windmill, small archway building, large archway building here. Just bringing you from back to forward, because as it goes back in space, it's going to get smaller. Okay, here is this massive, insane mural that you're going to have to go to Italy to see. But just, you know, I just wanted to put this one in here just so that you get a taste of what this man was capable of how many figures are in this thing and how ambitious both of these men are and how far and hard they are pushing themselves. You know, if you want to be a great artist, you got to get at Tintoretto's level. You got to get at Neo Rauch's level. You can't just dilly-dally on 8x10 sheets of paper. You know, there's big things happening, big people doing big things. Okay, I think I might be done. Okay, good. So, oopsie, I'm already over time, but if you'd like to stay and tell me your opinion on these artists, and if you've never heard of Neo Rauch, or if you've never heard of Tintoretto, or if you want to tell me anything about either of them, you can tell me now. You can leave a comment on the comment page. You can watch the videos and get more in-depth information about both of these artists. And if you really fell in love with Tintoretto today, you can go to DC before June and see these works. Questions? Comments?
Katie, this is Natalka. Looking at this last two paintings.
Hello? You can unmute yourself now.
I did.
Right.
I did.
No questions? Okay, well, in that case, please go to the comment section right here at the top of the, hi Natalka, I'm gonna unmute you. Wait, unmute. Unmute.
Ooh, and it mutes me back.
I can't hear you. Okay, I'm gonna hit unmute. And now you hit unmute. Now you get muted it.
Yeah?
I don't know, I can't hear you. You can leave a chat comment if you want. We can hear Natalka. Okay, that's great. I wonder what I did.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, you can.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So
okay, I don't know. I don't know, Natalka. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. But if anyone wants to.
So what I wanted to say,
right,
that
I know.
On Neo's pictures, you can see a little square in the different places of his picture, and there are three main colors. It's interesting. If you look at any of his painting, you can find three main colors in some geometrical shape. Okay.
Okay, I don't know what Natalka is saying, but I'm gonna stop there and turn off the video because I can't hear anything. You can leave a comment on the comment page, and whatever you just said, I'd love to have you comment it because I want to hear it. Thank you so much. I hope that you love Tintoretto and Neo Rauch. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.